So there I was. That's me, in Palestine, in 2011, marching towards the IDF at a weekly protest in the West Bank. And here I am 5 minutes later, running away as the IDF opened fire and shot out the wheels of our protest bulldozer. This was in Bil'in, the village in the West Bank that meets every week to protest the apartheid wall. I've been to Palestine 4 times. The first time was in 2010. I returned in 2011, and again for a couple more visits. And in 2013, I spoke on radio about my time in Palestine, and I gave a little bit of historical context to the conflict in the Middle East. Have a listen. I hope you will benefit from this upload from the archives, and it will bring back some memories for me. Free Palestine.
In the late 19th century, a guy called Theodor Herzl, who was an atheistic, secular Jew. What I mean by that is he didn't practice his religion, he didn't believe in God. He was Jewish in the sense that he was from a Jewish heritage, and he wanted a homeland for his people.
It was more of a cultural thing for him.
Not in a religious sense. And that Zionist viewpoint of there needing to be a Jewish country only for Jews was a minority viewpoint among Europe's Jewish people at the time. And these Zionists approached the British government in 1917, and the Balfour Declaration was made, whereby the British government promised to the Jewish people, or to the Zionist movement rather, that they will have a homeland in what was known as Palestine.
So, we want to cut you off here and then,
Okay,
so you just
do,
go on.
please do.
So basically, the origins is that you're going to come to is that the British allowed the Zionists, or they gave some sort of authority that they can go and maybe take the land or have the land.
The British made the promise on behalf of one people to another people, the land that belonged to a third people, the Palestinians. But as I said, going back over 100 years, that region was under control of the Ottoman Empire, under the Khilafah, the Muslim government, if you will, and the Muslims were more united than they are now. The only difference was, or a particular fact of that Khilafah, was that the Ottoman Empire was ruled out of Turkey.
Yeah.
The Ottomans were Turks when they controlled the Muslim world, and when the Turks sided with the Germans in the First World War around the same time, the British and the French made the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which was a deal that should Britain and France rather win the war and defeat the Germans, they will carve up the region of the Ottoman Empire between themselves. So they're making one promise to the Jewish people. They're agreeing between themselves secretly to carve the area up between themselves. Meanwhile, telling the Arab inhabitants of that land that if you fight for us during the First World War, we will guarantee you a country for yourself. And they sent Lawrence of Arabia there to round up the Arab armies to fight against the Turks. This is another key concept that I'm going to keep coming back to, is divide and conquer. Exactly. You divide the Muslims, you turn the Arabs against the Turks.
So, I mean, the conspiracy was that the Turks, the Ottomans, had their own Khilafah. They were running their own states. Islamic states, and they sort of manipulated the Arabs into maybe going against them.
Well, the British went to the Arab region of Syria and Jordan and Palestine, and said through Lawrence of Arabia, and suggested to the Arabs, why are you being run by the Turks? You are Arabs, they're Turks. And this is when nationalism was growing as an ideology in Europe, and the Jewish nationalism of Zionism was emerging at the same time. At the same time, Irish nationalism was encouraging people to fight for an independent Ireland. And the British made a similar promise to the people of Ireland: fight for us during the First World War, and you will have your own country. You will have a home rule. And it didn't happen. And Northern Ireland was partitioned, and Northern Ireland was retained as part of the UK. And through armed struggle, the Republic of Ireland was born. All these things happened around a similar time, and for similar reasons. But when the war was finished, and the British took control of Palestine and what was known as Transjordan, beyond the River Jordan, which became the modern state of Jordan, and the French took Lebanon and Syria. People still wanted their freedom, but sometimes it's out of the frying pan into the fire. And in Palestine today, people look back on that time of the British Mandate. Although they were under British rule, they weren't under a violent Israeli occupation driving them from their land, and they actually look back on it as good times. And in Nablus, where I did stay for a couple of months teaching English, there's an old red post box like you used to get in England with the Queen's emblem on it, and this is regarded as a, like, if only it was as good as it was back then. We didn't have our freedom, but we weren't being massacred and driven out of our land in the way that we are now.
Okay, so we've got to the point now where, you know,
yeah, we're nearly at the Second World War.
We're at the Second World War. We're at the point now where the Zionists, you can say, have the authority, or gained the authority or the authorization to go take this land. Okay, so how do they go about doing that?
Well, the Balfour Declaration promised a Jewish homeland, and it qualified that it shouldn't be at the expense of the local population living there. And a Jewish homeland is different to a Jewish state. And Jews going to live there. At that time, there were Jews and Christians. There had been Jews, Christians, and Muslims living together in relative peace for 1,000 years.
Yeah,
I was going to say.
yes.
And like you said earlier on, this is not about marginalising any particular religion or any
yeah.
section of society. The Jews for 1,000 years had lived in the Muslim lands in the safety of being protected citizens under that Khilafah
or their rule, yeah.
Islamic rule.
Yeah.
When Spain, Al-Andalus was under the Muslims, the Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived together peacefully. So much so that when the Spanish Inquisition came and drove the Muslims out, convert or leave, the Jews left with the Muslims and went to places like Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, because they knew they would be safe in those lands. Meanwhile, Jews were massacred throughout Europe, pogroms in Russia, and then it all culminated with what happened in the Second World War, which is just about where we're up to now. And this Nazi Holocaust with a capital H, murder of 6 million Jews, which turned the tide in terms of sympathy for what happened to the Jewish people.
What made Germany do that? I mean, what were the Jews doing to Germany, stroke Hitler, that he made to commit such horrific crime? Like you say, I felt so. I didn't, being ignorant growing up, you felt sorry for the Jews growing up, thinking, why is they getting slaughtered this way?
Unfortunately, there's always been racism, and the Jewish people in Europe, who were always a minority wherever they went, without a homeland, would always be victims, just as the Romani gypsy travellers who were also massacred in the Second World War, another people without a homeland, just as black people in America were oppressed. Every minority has always been oppressed, but does that mean that we should round up every black person and send them back to Africa, or we should round up every Romani gypsy and send them somewhere where they can all live together?
The thing is, they didn't round up the black people to send them back. They rounded them up to bring them over.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but,
Slaves,
but I think what Sergey is getting at is why were Jewish people oppressed?
Why were they specifically picked on?
You're basically saying that because they were minority.
Because minorities have always been oppressed, but is the answer to round them up and put them all somewhere?
But, I mean, come on. I mean, okay, they were the minority, but why to such extremes? I mean, you're talking about extermination.
Well, he also despised disabled people. Why did he despise them?
He saw them as defect.
Yeah, he was a racist. The racist ideology of the Nazis saw Jewish people and traveller people and disabled people, gay people, communists as defective, deficient, subhuman. They didn't see them as a human being.
Okay.
So what is? It doesn't matter if you can dehumanize someone to that level. It doesn't matter what you do.
It was basically just about the Aryan race, basically, like, you know, the superiority of the white man, sort of thing.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. And interestingly, initially, the Nazis what they wanted was a Europe free of Jews, and now that's exactly what the Zionists wanted as well. This Zionism was a capitulation to what the Nazis wanted. Yeah. So much so, in fact, there was an agreement known as the Havara Agreement between the Nazis and the Zionists in the 1930s, saying, will you help us facilitate immigration to Palestine? And the Nazis said, of course, we want the same thing. We hate Jewish people. We want a country free of Jews, and you want all the Jews to go and live in someone else's country, so we'll help you do that. Hitler had various other projects. He was sending Jews he wanted to send Jews to Madagascar. There was a project
Actually, what I want to ask you is now you're talking about shifting Jews to different countries or whatever. You mentioned earlier about there's a difference between an Israeli state and an Israeli land, or something along the lines.
Yeah, there's a difference between a homeland and a Jewish state.
What is the difference?
The difference would be that a Jewish homeland, there's no doubt the Holy Land is holy to the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, and there's no problem for all those religions to live there, and it is a special place for Jewish people, and it had been for thousands of years. But you can't give one of those religions monopoly over the other two, because as soon as you start doing something because it says so in my book, other people are gonna just do exactly the same thing according to their book, and that's not how you share a country. How can Israel be a Jewish state when 20% of its citizens aren't Jewish? Incidentally, when they say Jewish state, they don't mean religiously. They don't mean according to a believer in Judaism. They mean according to being of Jewish heritage.
The origins.
Any person in the world who has at least one Jewish grandparent can go and live in Israel tomorrow and become an Israeli citizen. But a Palestinian born there with the keys to his house,
it's like a privilege.
Can't go back to his own house.
Like a privilege sort of thing.
Yeah, and this is the racial discrimination, and there's no other word for it. Race is a vague term. It's not biologically relevant. It's created by society.
So why?
We're talking about race and the white man. Hitler regarded the North African Berbers as being Aryans, as being white men. When the Japanese fought alongside Hitler in the war, he considered them Aryans, even though they're not blonde, blue hair, blue eyes, blonde hair. Even Iran sided with Hitler in the war. They considered themselves Aryan.
Yeah, I mean the facts I've seen recently is that black Jews in Israel or black Jews of Jewish origin who want to go and stay in Israel are being,
Yeah, this is an interesting point. And I've been debating this on Facebook and with friends recently. A video went viral on Facebook. The video that the New York Times didn't want you to see, about There's black Jewish people going back to Israel.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
one issue, and there's also asylum seekers from other parts of Africa going to Israel, and of course they're being treated badly. There's people having rallies saying, "Go back to Sudan. We don't want black people in our country." And this video's gone viral because the New York Times didn't want you to see it, but you have seen it. And my reaction was, are you surprised that a country born out of a racist ideology that we've been talking about might mistreat asylum seekers when it's been massacring the native inhabitants of that land for over 60 years? The Israelis that went there to occupy Palestine, they are the immigrants, and they have rounded up the local inhabitants and bucked them out. And as I said, are the Israelis worried that the Africans are going to do the same to them?
Could be.
On the other issue of, as you said, about black Jews returning, so-called, to Israel, the Falasha, the Ethiopian Jews who've lived in Ethiopia and preserved their heritage for thousands of years, they're probably the ones that didn't make it through with Moses. They've been in that land for thousands of years, and they're more Jewish, I would say, than the atheistic European white settlers that went there. They've been coming to Israel over the years. Some of them were so-called rescued from a famine in the 80s, picked up, plonked down into Israel, didn't know where they were, didn't speak the Hebrew that they spoke, but probably knew their religion better. These black Jewish people that find themselves in Israel now, it's emerged that the women from that community, against their will and without their knowledge, were given birth control injections to prevent them having children. This is the kind of eugenics that you might think that went on in Nazi Germany, but that's happening today in the so-called only democracy in the Middle East, which is certainly not true. But the thing is, there is racism everywhere. Every country with a minority has minorities, unfortunately, and it's wrong, undergo racism, and foreigners to a country undergo racism. But there is a unique situation unfolding in Palestine, in that the inhabitants, or not the inhabitants of Israel, but the people living in the land occupied illegally by Israel, are being segregated, are under apartheid, are living behind a wall to keep them separate from the other race. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, you pretty much covered that bit. In regards to the land now, okay, why wasn't the Jews or the Zionists or whatever you want to, have them be, why were they authorized to take that land? Why couldn't they go to another land, a vacant land maybe, and start building from there? Because if they didn't have a land, and if they say that God promised them a land, I mean, the world's huge. You can go into some land and start building.
Why Pacific?
Why specifically?
My answer to that question is, why do we give in to racism and admit, you know what, Jewish people can't live among the rest of us. Let's round them up and put them
somewhere.
Put them somewhere. That to me is a disgusting racist ideology, and no wonder the Nazis. It must have been music to their ears when they heard that there's this movement that wants to get all the Jews, round them up, and put them somewhere. They must have thought, good, we won't have to look at you because we consider you to be subhuman, which is another.
No, but the thing is, okay.
But I know what you're getting at.
I hear what you're saying. You're saying about, that's unfair to say that go dump some barren land and let them be. Okay, all right. Let's say that is unfair, but the way they went over and took that land, I mean, how can you justify that in any way?
The lie that was told by the Zionist movement was that this was a land without people, for a people without land.
Say again.
They claimed it was a land without people for a people without land. In that suggested that Palestine was empty and it's desert and it's there's no one there. We can go live there.
So basically, it's a third world state. It needs helping anyway.
Yeah, it's empty. And in fact, the Zionists so someone that went there to investigate the situation there, they described it as, yes, well, there's a few blacks there, that's their words, but for them there is no value. As it doesn't matter. We can, no problem. Again, this is dehumanizing a population, but the fact that it was full of people is evident when you see the millions now living in the refugee camps. These are the people who were there, who fled the so-called War of Independence when the British drew up a partition plan, an unfair partition plan for a Jewish state and an Arab state on the land. When the Jews were given the Jews, they were Jewish people. The Zionist movement were given 56% of the land when they were under a third of the population. No wonder the Arabs rejected it. And when the plan got rejected, the Zionist movement took it by force with a terrorist campaign, where groups like the Ergun gang and the Stern gang exploded the King David Hotel, murdered British soldiers, and hung them in the orange groves.
Okay, so. Right. So basically, what you're saying is that they wanted to integrate into Palestine. They wanted to integrate. They wanted to eliminate the local people, exterminate, or just get rid of them. Okay, but forgive me if I'm hearing you wrong. Yeah. Right. You said to me that let's go back. You said to me that it was unfair to dump them somewhere and let them be. Mm-hmm. They had to integrate into somewhere.
Yep.
Okay. For them to use force, as they did they say that we weren't allowed to integrate, so we had to do what we had to do?
Well, Britain.
What was the Palestinians' stance on this in the beginning? Okay. Obviously, they had warnings that, look, this is going to happen, or this is going to happen, or whatever. What was their stance in all this? Did they give an invitation and say, okay, you know what, the Jews of Europe, they've got nowhere to go. They're more than welcome to come over here.
I mean, I don't think you can ever conclude what a people as a whole might have thought. It's one thing to receive refugees. When the Jews were suffering in America and Germany and Poland during the Second World War, Britain turned its back on them, didn't want to help them. Nobody wanted these people, these immigrants. And those that fled to after the Second World War, many of them didn't want to go to Palestine. Many wanted to return to their homes. And it was in the interest of the Zionist movement following the Second World War and the Holocaust to stampede the Jews of North Africa and other parts of the Arab world into the newly found so-called Jewish state. But Sogi, you want to come
in there? Yeah. My understanding of Palestine is the birthplace of Christianity and most of the religions, and I thought it was populated anyway. I mean, when you said they promised people that it was an empty land, so to speak, I find that very difficult to believe.
It was a lie. You shouldn't believe it, and the evidence is in what happened.
How can they actually say that it was an empty land? Because it was like, it was in the 1900s. They must have known the history of that land.
Yeah.
Known that the Crusaders went there.
The
Muslims ruled it. There were so many wars there. How can they actually come to a conclusion? It's a barren land. Let's go.
Look, as you can see, I've got several books in front of me, and brushing up on my history as we came in. The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pappé, an Israeli academic who is spot on the topic. He outlines how the project was always about having to clear the land of the people, and the operations were known as purifying operations, cleansing the land of the people. They knew there were people there. They knew they would always have to get rid of them.
Get rid of them. Just needed someone to do that dirty work for them, basically.
Okay, let's get to that now. The decisions made. How do they go to that land, and how do they take over?
Well,
who's backing them? They've got,
obviously they've got backing, they've got support somewhere as well.
They've got to have some kind of support, or were there enough masses of them to just so-called walk in and take everybody out?
The people always suspect that Britain facilitated this this tragedy, and certainly they are the authors of the tragedy by promising the land to that people. But then the Zionist movement in 1948 snatched even more than they'd been promised via a partition plan in their so-called War of Independence, what the Palestinians know as the Nakba, or the tragedy, when around 800,000 people were forcibly removed from the land and went to be refugees in the West Bank, Gaza, and in the surrounding countries.
Wow!
And it was taken by force.
Around
Around that number, and
wow.
The Arab armies from the surrounding countries arrived. Zionists will say, "Oh, the day that Israel was created, the Arab armies vowed to destroy the Jewish state." This is the Zionist line. In truth, as Ilan Pappy outlines in his book, the Arab armies were arriving to try to prevent this ethnic cleansing that was happening, but they arrived too late, and 800,000 people were removed from their land. And I want to come to a point on divide and rule. There were a variety of ethnic groups living in Palestine at the time. There's a variety of religions, Jews and Christians. Another demographic, you've got Bedouin people. Bedouins are the nomadic tribesmen who travel around. There's Druze, who are a small sect, like an offshoot from the Shia, you could say, and also Circassians, who are the descendants of soldiers brought by the Turks to the region from the Caucasus. And as these Jewish militias were roaming through the villages, Ilan Pappy, he points out that when they would come to a Druze village, or they would come to the Bedouins or the Circassians, they would try and make a deal with these tribesmen. He describes it as an oath of blood, or a treaty of blood, as if to say, look, if you guys join with us, fight with us, facilitate our creation of this Jewish state, we're going to give you a home for it. We'll give you a place in the future. And some of those communities did actually agree to that. And to this day, and like you said earlier on, this is not against any community or any particular ethnic group. It just highlights the role of divide and conquer. And there's still a lot of Bedouins do serve in the Israeli army. They're Muslims. Under Israeli law, a Muslim doesn't have to serve in the IDF. Jewish people do have to. That's a racially segregated law as it is. But the Bedouin community often they serve in the Israeli army.
Well, Israeli government probably doesn't want Muslims in the army because they probably don't trust them anyway.
But if you've got a minority group on your side, and this is like the British turned to the Arabs and said, "You're Arabs. Why don't you fight against you're Bedouins. Why don't you fight against the others?
Right.
Or you're Circassian. You're Druze." So anyone can be bought. It's corrupt. It doesn't matter. But Muslim, Jew, the guy who shot Tom Herndl, a British volunteer who'd killed about 10 years ago, shot dead trying to protect Palestinian children. He was shot by a Bedouin soldier with a Muslim name. So it doesn't matter, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, whatever it is, right is right and wrong is wrong.
But at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of people they just want to eat. And if you've got Bedouins or poor individuals, it's a case everywhere. I mean, in Afghanistan, it happens, where certain minority groups, took sides, you know, against certain individuals, and it happens everywhere. It happens everywhere.
Yeah. Well, Pappy points out, and I'll read from his page. Tragic consequence of their defection was the Druze troops became the main vehicle for the Jews to carry out their ethnic cleansing of the Galilee. It's an area in what was Palestine. Their alliance with the Zionist movement has inexorably alienated the Druze from the rest of the Palestinians. So to this day, because of what happened, the Druze community are now discriminated against or not seen as part of the wider Palestinian community. But that, as I said, back then...
Well, would the Palestinians really accept those minority Bedouin groups that turned against them and sided with the Israelis or the Jews or the Zionists, whatever you want to call them? They wouldn't.
Well, no, they wouldn't. That's why. But this is another classic case of divide and rule.
I mean, that to them is selling your soul. I mean, if you think about it, that is what it is to them.
It is. And Ilan Pappy mentions that another sect, or another group, the Christians, often the Zionists would try to make similar agreements with the Palestinian Christians when they were doing these clearances, and the Palestinians rejected it. The Christians, Christians, Muslims lived together in that land for 1,000 years. They were both Palestinian. They couldn't be bought.
Oh,
they wouldn't sell out.
All right. Okay. I mean, that's the general, gist of it.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to get at is obviously it's been oppressions for how long now? It's since 1940.
Well, 1948 was the Nakba.
Yeah.
But as we said already, I don't think that's the starting point. This plan was set in motion in 1917 when Britain promised the land.
Of course, yeah, way before that.
Wrongfully.
But the action took place in 1948, right? So let's move forward now. Obviously, there's been so much oppression happening. Palestinian land is just getting smaller, and smaller. What is happening out there now? You was there. Tell us a little bit about your experiences there.
Okay. Well,
can I come to?
Go on, sir.
Oh, sorry, Rob. Your experience will come to later on. This is just a background we're just touching on at the moment. A couple of texts have come in, so let me just touch on them. Don't want to miss out to people that are listening. Keep interacting with them. Question from Mr. Julian. What is the attitude of Jewish minority that lived in Palestine before Zionist movement towards the state of Israel? Many thanks, Sophia. Thank you for your question, Sophia.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I have been stood outside the Israeli embassy protesting when Israel have been bombarding Gaza, and I've stood shoulder to shoulder with Orthodox Jews who reject the state of Israel and the so-called Jewish state. And one guy was telling me that his family are originally from Jerusalem, and that his grandmother was telling me how the Muslim families, the Jewish families would look after each other's kids. They were like it was a brotherhood.
Yeah.
It was a brotherhood, and the Jews that were living there before were seen as part of the Palestinian society. It's this identity that has been eroded by this Zionism. A man I met in Hebron, the old city of Hebron, Al Khalil, said to me, "We welcome the Hebronite Jews. It's the settlers that are the problem. These foreigners that have come and confiscated our land." But certainly, the tension between the two religions, or the three religions, began with the advent of this Zionist movement. And I think religions can live together in harmony until you put one person above another.
Okay, great.
It's a good question, though. Thank you.
Just want to give out the text number again if you want to get involved, or if you've got a say in this matter or this topic. The text number is 07909 567 527. I'll repeat that again. It's 07909 567 527. We got any more text there, Sogi? I think we
I'll
got through
come back
most
to that few, but I'll come back to them in a minute.
Okay.
So I just want to lead on to okay, we're giving a bit of background on what it's about, but
yeah, well, it's a big topic, as you can see.
It's massive. It's probably it's never ending. But it's come down to basically your experience of going down there, what you did, what your job was down there, what your idea, what perspectives you have when you went down there. Was it what you expected? Was it not? Did you get shot at? Did you see any bombings? Did you see any violence? Did you see any oppression? Did you see any kids getting battered? You know, we want to hear.
Well, I saw a few of those things in the 3 times that I've been there. If we fast forward to 2010, myself and a friend, Kamal, if you're listening, respect, miss you. You should be here. We went to Jordan, and from Jordan we crossed the King Hussein Bridge.
What was the reasons for going?
Mm-hmm. Reasons for going to Jordan, or reasons for
going wherever you were planning to go?
Well, we decided we'd go, having watched a presentation by the Open Bethlehem project, which was presented to us in a church, where this lady from Bethlehem was explaining how the people of Bethlehem have lost their main industry, being tourism, because of all the fighting and the occupation. We concluded that if we believe in this, we've always followed it, and we've protested outside the Israeli embassy against what's going on. Well, we should go there and witness it firsthand. And she explained that you can fly to Tel Aviv airport in Israel and make your way to the West Bank, but a Palestinian can't do that. A Palestinian can't fly to Tel Aviv and enter Israel. They'll be refused entry.
On what grounds?
That they're probably trying to come back to their house that they were ejected from in 1948.
Back to the house.
Palestinians don't have a state. They don't have a passport as such. They have papers. They don't have what we have as British citizens, where you can come and go freely as you wish. So a fairer way is to go via Jordan and enter as a Palestinian has to. And so we made that trip, and should it be found out that you are a Palestinian sympathizer, you will be refused entry at the border, rejected. So we made our way to Amman. Quite naively, it's the first time I'd done it. I didn't really know what to expect, but we'd been told, don't make it clear, don't wear your Palestinian t-shirt or whatever, kufiya, with I love Yasser Arafat t-shirt, whatever it is. So we made our way, and we were separated straight away. The guy, a soldier with a machine gun, took me into the middle of the field, told me to take my bag off. But I was the first guy he clocked, funny enough, as blonde, blue-eyed as I am. He,
really?
With no beard, I tried to look as inconspicuous as possible, and he took me into the middle of the field, put your rucksack behind a little concrete niche. I thought he was going to do a controlled explosion on it. And what's in there, what was this and that. He'd taken my friend Kamal elsewhere. We were now being questioned and cross-referenced. Okay. How do you know each other? What does he do for a job? This and that. And every person that was being detained for a long time was visibly Muslim. So there's the discrimination is happening before you've even arrived. And should you enter the West Bank through that border, you're going to get an Israeli stamp in your passport, which will make life difficult going to certain countries. But you can ask to have it done on a piece of paper.
Yeah, what's that about? I've heard that before.
Lebanon, Syria,
the Muslim countries, basically.
A lot of Muslim countries, for a good reason, don't want people that have gone to Israel, so-called, to enter their country.
Okay.
Not least because sometimes it's IDF soldiers murdering people in Dubai with fake passports, but whatever. Because those countries don't, like Syria never signed a peace agreement with Israel. So you can't enter Syria with an Israeli stamp in your passport, but you can't visit Palestine without an Israeli stamp in your passport. So you can ask to have it put on paper, which I did. Kamal asked the same question. His passport was taken away for about 3 hours. We were detained, waited, and against his will, they stamped his passport just to screw him over because he's got a Muslim name, and if he wants to go back to his home country, it's going to be difficult. But so what? It's a small price to pay to enter Palestine. And then we went and we stayed in Bethlehem. We saw Church of the Nativity. We went to Al-Quds. We saw Masjid al-Aqsa. And we came to Hebron, Al-Khalil, the city of Abraham's grave, which is a heavily occupied city where the settlements, the settlers, the Jewish settlers who have been illegally transplanted into the land, won in a war, live above the Palestinians. They live literally in blocks built above their homes, and there's parts of Hebron which are completely segregated and no-go areas for Palestinians. And we went to visit the grave of Abraham. Myself, another guy we met out there, English Christian guy, and my friend Kamal. And we were questioned by soldiers as we were entering the
How old is that
Jewish
grave?
side.
How old is that grave?
Well, how old was Abraham?
Yeah,
I guess
that's the thing.
3,000 years ago? 3,500?
And it's maintained, is it?
It is maintained. Well, I'll tell you how it's maintained actually when we get in. Well, when I get to that part of the story. But outside, we were questioned about our religion. I said I'm a secular person. I don't follow any religion. And the other guy said I'm Christian. And then Kamal said I'm Muslim. Not thinking anything of it, just answering the question.
Yeah, just being naive.
All of a sudden, there's bickering in Hebrew, and he's being grabbed and wrestled by a guy with a machine gun and dragged out of the area. Yeah, absolutely. And he's being compliant and aggressive, nothing. Grabbed by a soldier with a machine gun and dragged on. Yeah, just because he answered that question with Muslim. I said, well, you wait 5 minutes. I'm just going to see the Jewish grave. So up I went, up the stairs. Me and this Christian guy went, put the cap on our heads, and we saw the Jewish side of the grave of Abraham. It's split. This is the segregation. This is real apartheid.
Wow.
The Jewish side, and you could see through the bars through into where the grave is, and it's still covered with the Muslim embroidered carpet or whatever it is, covering it with Arabic writing, and I can read. Where it's been preserved by the Muslims for 1,000 years,
centuries.
And it's so sad to see that when these two religions are meeting in something that they share in common, there's bars between them.
Division, massive.
And at that point, I was walking along, and then you hear the adhan come from next door, and I heard these two guys kind of like talking to each other in disgust at hearing that the call to prayer from the Muslim side, and they acknowledged me, and they're like, "Oh, are you visiting? Welcome to Israel." I didn't say, "Oh, I'm not in Israel," but they said, "You know, you're gonna in a thick New York accent." They said to me, "Yeah, you're gonna meet a lot of people here. They're gonna tell you that this is their land, but they're visitors. This is our land. This is our land, and anyone else here just visitors." And with a New York accent, they're telling me that Palestinians that have been here for 2,000 years they're a visitor. They're the intruder, which to me that just strikes me as ridiculous.
Wow. You're listening to 95.6 FM, Wanuma, Reading's Community Radio. This is the Late Show, presented by myself, Sergeant, and Brother Barbara Ali. We have Brother Julian with us. I'm just, again, fascinated with what he's got to say. Well, to me, this is the best part, the personal, he's telling it as he experienced it firsthand, what it means to be a Muslim or a Jew in Palestine. So, gosh. I mean,
Hebron is certainly a flashpoint where you'll see the aggressiveness of the occupation, and I'm I think we need to explain what I mean by settlers for a minute.
Before that, is what you experience on one side of the border, do you think is happening to the non-Muslims on the Muslim side, or are the Muslims treating visitors with a bit more respect than what you?
That's a good one. Are there Jews living in Gaza and places like that where it's predominantly Muslim areas?
Look, the Jews that were living in Gaza until 2005 were settlers. And this is why I need to explain what I mean by settlers.
Settler, yeah, settler.
Can I go to a question?
Yeah, go on. Take a question.
It's a quick little question. A lot of people say that there's a huge difference between the Jewish and Muslim quarters in Jerusalem. How true is this?
Right. The Jewish and the Muslim quarters in Jerusalem, you've got the so-called the Western Wall, where the Jews come and pray, the so-called Wailing Wall, where the Jews come and pray, which they regard as being the wall of the temple of King Solomon, which was destroyed, and that they're hoping to rebuild it one day. That's the Jewish side, and on the other side of that wall, you've got Masjid al-Aqsa and the Dome of the Rock. So the difference is, well, there's the wall between them, and people say that there are Jews that wish to rebuild their temple, and in order to do so, they need to dismantle the Masjid al-Aqsa because it's built upon the site of where the temple was.
Julian, what is the biggest life lesson you have taken away from your time spent in Palestine? From Sana Ibrahim.
Wow, Sana Ibrahim, who I met in Palestine. Meeting you, Sana. But also learning...
He says that with a twinkle in his eyes.
Learning that that I think you can go somewhere and not understand it, or you could find out about it and never having gone there. But if your research on a subject like Palestine, if you see that there's an injustice there, the least that you can do is speak out against it. And I met Sana when I was teaching for Project Hope in Nablus, and one of the guys there at the end of our talk, at the end of our stay there, he gave a talk and he said, "Look, now it's up to you to go and tell people what you've seen. Mm-hmm. Speak out against it. That's the least that you can do."
Yeah.
And I'll finish with what action we can actually take physically.
Okay. You want to go to another question?
Yeah, go for it. Keep them coming.
By the bucket load here. Having been to Palestine, how easy was it for you to return for the second and third times? And how have your experiences changed your views? Have your experiences changed your views and beliefs on the whole situation in Palestine since your visits, Naf?
Okay. The second time was the easiest time to enter because I went alone without any Muslim friends, with a British passport, and the only questions the only funny look I get is about my middle name.
But why did the Muslim friends want to go with you? Were they naive, or was it just a little?
They wanted to go for the same reason that I wanted to go.
But anybody else want to go for? It's just religion made them an outcast. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry.
That's exactly right, and that's the discrimination.
The religion itself. Sorry, crack on. I'll just go through these when I get one.
Go for it, Segi. Okay.
No, I'm just saying.
So where we were up to.
Your what was it, charity that you went for?
Oh yeah, I was working in Project Hope in Nablus, where I was teaching English to the local kids in refugee camps and summer schools. There was other sporting activities going on. I was training Thai boxing out there with Salahuddin and Amid and Mohammed Thokan. If they're tuning in from Palestine, Assalamu alaikum, boys. Bishtaq lak wallah, miss you. And I was having a great time. It wasn't a holiday, but I was really enjoying the Palestinian people. They're amazing people, despite all that they've been through. Any foreigner that goes there with a good intention, you'll be welcome, whether you're Christian, Muslim, or Jewish. Doesn't matter.
I've actually heard that. I've heard that the Palestinian people are the most hospitable people in the world. They'll invite you to their house, and they might only have a packet of biscuits in their house, and they've probably got a family of 6, and they'll give you the pack of biscuits. You know, these are the sort of people they are. These are the sort of people they are. Yeah, and I've heard these sort of stories from numerous people. You know.
Well, I think we need to explain what I mean by settlers and settlements, because I've mentioned it a couple of times.
Why is it the settlers are so aggressive?
The settlers,
they seem more aggressive than anything. I mean, every time I see them, they're just angry.
The settlers that are in the West Bank are there. Some of them are religious fanatics who believe that this is their divine right and God has given them the land and that they should be there. Others are poorer sections of society, of the Israeli society, who are put there as kind of like a buffer zone for the rest of the Israelis. So my encounters with settlers in the West Bank, for example, I was back in Hebron in 2011 once again, and there's a street that is completely sectioned off, where local Palestinians cannot enter, Jews only. The only country in the world today, the only place in the world today where you find roads and buses for one particular race is happening in Palestine. You know
what this reminds me of? Sorry to cut you off. It's apartheid, isn't it?
It's exactly.
That's what it reminds me of.
It's exactly apartheid, which is why another book I've got here from Jimmy Carter, Palestine, Peace Not Apartheid. Jimmy Carter, the former American president, can acknowledge what you've just acknowledged. This is exactly apartheid. There's no other word for it.
That's right. That's exactly.
And this street in Hebron, which is no-go area for Palestinians, as a British citizen, I can walk down there, no problem. And I was with an American.
Do you have to wear your British passports?
Well, I had it in my hand, but
so how will they know where you're from or what you're about?
Well, I was with an American friend with American passport, Thawab, if you're listening, you remember this, and she's visibly Muslim. She wears a scarf, and this was like a red rag to a bull to settlers in Hebron. And we walked through the street with passports in hand, and some bunch of kids, about 13, 14, emerged and began throwing rocks at us, and rocks were flying past my head. And there's a soldier standing there right in front of me, watching it happen. And I'm trying to explain to these guys, I'm trying to engage them in conversation in English. I said, "Do you speak English? Why are you throwing rocks at me?" But it's clear they regard us as other or visibly Muslim, and that's it. You're not welcome. And
if you're a sympathizer in any shape, way, or form, then you get treated the same, isn't it?
Maybe so, but to me, I think they were just prejudging on the fact that my friend looked Muslim. Okay. That was it. But yeah, you will be treated the same if you show your allegiance with these people. But after that happened, we went to complain to the soldier at the checkpoint as you come into that section of Hebron, and when we got there, someone else was complaining about being harassed. Another foreigner, Belgian or something, being were complaining to the soldiers that, look, we've been harassed by settlers. They've been violent towards us, and the soldier was saying, no, this doesn't happen. And we said, well, look, it's just happened to us as well. So this does happen. These people are violent and aggressive, and the settlers are there because when in 1967 Israel occupied the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, and the Golan Heights, which is part of Syria, the Israelis began transplanting their population into these war-won lands, and that's a war crime. To transplant your population onto land that you've won in a war is a war crime. And these settlements, they're not a little holiday camp. They're massive compounds. They're sectioned off. They're no-go areas for Palestinians. They cut Palestinians off from their land, from their resources, from their farms. It's part of this colonization. This is what's going on. Colonization of a land.
Tell us a little bit about this wall that's been constructed.
That just hit the nail on the head with the question I got in here. It says a photo used to promote the show is of the Israeli wall. Can you explain what this wall is for those who don't know, and how it contributes to Israel as an apartheid state? Tuwab.
Right. Well, as the Israelis call it, it's a security fence.
Oh, it's a fence.
Yeah, it's just a fence. Don't worry about it.
It goes through everything.
It's only 8 meters tall.
Yeah.
When the State of Israel was created in 1948, the green line refers to the border drawn up for a provisional for what would be the Palestinian state, and this wall, as so-called security fence, designed to keep the Israelis safe from attacks from Palestinians. It doesn't follow the border of the green line. It snakes round it and is actually twice as long as the border itself. So you can see how it's being used to. It's a land grab. There's no other word for it.
Yeah.
It's a disgusting land.
The thing is, they can get away with it. So
yeah, but through non-violent resistance and protest, for example, in the town of Bil'in in the West Bank, which where locals were sectioned off from their farmland by the wall, every Friday there is a protest demanding that it be moved back, and after 4 or 5 years of protest, it was moved back, or it was agreed to be moved back, not to where it should be, but it was moved slightly. And on the day that was, or the Friday following the agreement for that to happen, I was at the protest in Bil'in, and Salam Fayyad, the Prime Minister of Fatah at the time, was also there. It was a huge turnout for the protest, and they brought a bulldozer to smash into the wall, which it's a token gesture. It's not going to do anything, but they brought a bulldozer, and I was marching with many internationals who were present, and it's always important to have an international presence at these things, because the Israelis are scared to kill a British citizen or American, because if they do, it's all over the news. But Palestinian blood is cheaper. You can kill a few Palestinians, but if a British person dies, all over the news, Israel looks bad.
That's right. Yeah.
So we were there, hundreds of people marching behind these banners, protesting the wall with a bulldozer. The bulldozer was up the front before I knew it. Before it even got near the front of or not with even 100 meters of the wall, the Israeli soldiers had shot out the wheels and had started firing tear gas. And there was chaos everywhere. People were running. People had been killed by a tear gas canister. It's like a rugby ball made of metal with gas coming out of it, spraying everywhere. And in the commotion that was kicking off, I was retreating. I was really scared, and I was overcome with the smoke, and I was trying to hide behind a tree, and I was bent over double, like I was choking. I couldn't breathe, and some guy put his arm around me, and he had a bag of onions. And if you smell onions, it kind of you can smell it, and it makes you realise that you can breathe again, and it counteracts the effect of the tear gas. I was coughing and spluttering, and he said, "Here, smell this." I started to feel better. He's a Israeli guy that protests every week because he's against what his government is doing.
Tell us a little bit about the struggle Palestinians are going through with employment, with feeding their families, the daily struggle that they have to go through, even doing simple things like going to, a hospital for their kids or, doctor checkup, all these scenarios, things that we take for granted. And for them, it's a huge struggle every day just to do the simplest things.
Yeah. Okay. The West Bank is riddled with checkpoints.
That's all you hear on the news: West Bank, Gaza, West Bank.
I mean, if to break it down, the West Bank is the West Bank of the River Jordan, which is the eastern side of the Palestinian territories,
Okay.
and the other enclave to the southwest is the Gaza Strip, which is completely locked on both sides and under siege. Nothing. Israel control what goes in and what goes out. People are tunneling under just to get food in from Egypt. The struggle in Gaza, where I haven't yet been, there's certainly is more impoverished. It's the most densely populated place on earth. 25 miles by 3 miles, 1.5 million people. So the poverty there is certainly to a greater degree than in the West Bank. Hence why there's more support for more militant groups in Gaza, such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad, as compared to the West Bank, which is controlled by Fatah, who are.
It just goes to show. It just goes to show when a human being is struggling to eat, when
you get desperate, you turn to extreme measures.
Well, you turn to rebellion.
Yeah,
and you want to rebel. That's the first thing you want to do to get what you are entitled to as a human being.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
There's that, and also not too long ago, there was an imam. A former imam of Masjid al-Aqsa. He came actually to Reading, and I was there, to listen to him, for the brief time that he was here, just a few words that he said. And he said something that, was really saddening. He said that the farmers who grow the crops like olives and whatnot, what they do is they harvest all year round. And just as everything ripens and, the stock's filling, the Israelis are coming to take it, and then they got to wait a whole year for their crops to grow again, and then to get the olive branches or whatever it is. This is a reality of what they're going through. So basically, they're working for free. I mean, they'll harvest all year round. As soon as their crops are ready, so they can get them together and sell them, they'll get taken away.
Yeah, I mean, and the war has been on the people and their land and their what they can cultivate. Driving through the West Bank at night, you will see fields on fire that the settlers have set alight to destroy.
And going back to the wall that we were talking about, I mean, this wall has no limits. It's like breaking through everything. So it's going through people's lands, through people's homes. I mean, it's just bulldozing everything in its path as they're building it.
Yeah.
I mean, have they finished building, or is it still going on?
I believe it's concluded, and it's now all the way around the West Bank. Someone text in, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But yeah, it's twice as long as the border, and it eats into the land.
Okay. All right. Well, what we're going to do is we can't fit all this into one show, so we will wrap it up pretty soon. And what we'll do, in the future, inshallah, we'll have you back on again, and we can, always bring awareness to this topic. It's a topic that's not going to die in the near future. So, we'll always be discussing it. We've got a question there on the Ustream as well, actually. Someone was saying that, yes, Palestine is a conflict, and if anyone wants to help, what can they do that will actually make a difference?
Okay.
Or, what can they do, really?
This will probably be a good conclusion for tonight's show. What can we
show.
actively do? It's all well and good sitting here crying about it, and if you're religious, if you want to pray about it, you're welcome. What can we actually do physically, other than speaking out about it? In 2005, Palestinian civil society collectively made an agreement signed by 108 organisations from within the Palestinian community itself, calling on the world to impose boycott, divestment and sanctions upon Israel in the same way that the world boycotted apartheid South Africa. And that's the word we mentioned earlier, Sogi, apartheid. This is what it is, and what was done before was to completely boycott that country, make sure that Israel is known to be a pariah state in the world. That means not buying Israeli goods. That means things like the under-21s European football championships shouldn't be happening in Israel. People should be objecting to this. They shouldn't be hosting that kind of sporting event. Cricketers in the 80s wouldn't go and play football in South Africa because it was cricket rather.
Well, I mean, you reminded me of something. A couple of West Indian players.
Yeah.
I believe it was 5 West Indian players. They actually went to South Africa when it was banned, and these players were in their primes. I mean, they were. I think it was Colin Croft. I believe he was devastating bowler. He could have had a serious career, and he went there. And when they went there, they all got banned from the sport. They were banned from the sport.
Yeah, because the world turned their back on them because that's not acceptable.
That's right. So basically, what you're saying is that when it comes to Israeli goods, anything to do with Israel or supporting Israel, we have to try to, as little as possible, avoid it as much as possible.
Absolutely. And so if you search BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions, the website will have more.
Does it really make a difference, though, Julian? I mean, say for example, Coca-Cola. It's an Israeli product.
Is it an Israeli product?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
What's this, Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
What product? I don't know. That's a good one.
What I was getting at. Does it really make a difference? For example, if there's a really good product but it's made in Israel, does it really make a difference if we,
if everyone collectively gets together and gets behind it, it will make a difference. This is not the only thing that we can do. It's not the only thing to be done. The apartheid South Africa was smashed between the anvil of collective solidarity with
us having
hammer of armed struggle.
So us having the attitude of you know what, it don't really make a difference. I'm gonna buy this clothing or I'm gonna buy this food product. It don't really matter. What's it gonna do? But I mean, is that just us being lazy or having a poor attitude?
I guess it's the old thing. Well, what difference can I make? But if everyone says that, then we won't get anywhere.
It's similar to a guy who's into recycling. I was watching the other day an individual. This is a bit off topic, but it's sort of related in a way. The guy basically is into recycling, and what he does in a whole year, he puts out about 2 or 3 bin bags because he recycles everything in his house, and it makes you think. They think, imagine if everyone had the same attitude. I mean, we will be recycling everything, and there will be no rubbish anywhere.
Absolutely.
The guy literally folds all his junk in little pieces and puts it in black bags, and he puts out 3 black bags a whole year of rubbish.
There you go.
So,
Okay, before we wrap up, sorry, let's go through these couple of questions. I don't want to miss them out.
Yeah.
Julian, your story is amazing to listen to, and thank you for educating us all with your experience. No name given.
Thank you very much.
What can we do to stand up to apartheid system in Israel? Great Shaw, Jamjar.
Well, I've mentioned the boycott, divestment, sanctions. This is an example of non-violent resistance, the kind that smashed apartheid in South Africa. Pretty earlier this year, hundreds of of Palestinian prisoners who are on hunger strike, some of them going 60 days plus without food, hungering for justice. Did you know about that? Maybe you switched on, Guy, you did. I didn't hear anything about it in the BBC, Sky News. No one had a clue. But
why don't the Western media report on things like this?
Because...
Is it because
Zionist controlled media?
Because there's an agenda. But if one bullet flies out from Gaza, we hear about it.
Correct.
If an Israeli
is it
from a rock thrown by a Palestinian, we hear about it.
Mental conditioning that they're giving us, like
well, look, this is what I'm saying to those that support Israel, or to the moderate voices in Israel, is please listen to the people that are boycotting Israel. There's a reason for it. Please listen to the hunger strikers. Please listen to the people in the villages, like in Bil'in, who are showing up every week to have a peaceful protest. People say, "Oh, the Palestinians, they're suicide bombers." Some of them have resorted to suicide bombing because you didn't listen to everything else. So please listen. And people blame the media for this. Is the video that the New York Times didn't want you to see. Well, this. Social media now enables everyone to be the media, and people like yourselves, I really respect you for setting up what you have and having voices on to talk about it. You can be the media, and you can spread the word.